Hey, what's up? This is Morticia Evermore. Welcome to the very first episode of Coffee and Cryptids. I've got my coffee here. I've already gotten started on it, as you can see from the lipstick on the straw. That's a straw. You're probably wondering, what is a cryptid? So a cryptid is some kind of unidentified creature or living entity that you can't really say actually exists. We're talking Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot, things like that. That's what a cryptid is. There is a cryptid I really like named the Mothman. And the Mothman is from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, which is really not all that far from where I am currently in eastern Kentucky. The Mothman has been an absolute legend in Point Pleasant, West Virginia for so many years. Back in the 60s, there was all of these crazy things that happened surrounding the legend of the Mothman. The Mothman is like this creature that is supposedly like between 6 feet tall and 8 feet tall with like a 9-foot wingspan. Looks like a man's body but has like moth-like feet and these big wings and like a moth head with these big red glowing eyes. An absolutely terrifying concept if you think about actually seeing something like that. Like coming at you, flying at you, you'd be like, what the actual fuck? In the 1960s, there were a ton of sightings of this Mothman. It started with a couple of guys in a cemetery that were digging a grave, and they claimed to have seen the Mothman flying from tree to tree. There were two couples driving in a car on like a moonlit cruise kind of a thing out in the middle of nowhere. It happened to be near an old TNT plant, and that TNT plant is kind of surrounding this story. A lot of sightings of the Mothman have been seen there. People do think that the Mothman actually has something to do with this TNT plant, and maybe he's some kind of mutation because of the tests that they were doing at this location. So there's these couples, they're going for like a moonlit cruise, and they see the Mothman in the road in the distance, and you know, he sees them, and they start speeding up, and the Mothman starts flying after them, chasing them, and they're just like, you know, what the actual fuck? Just like driving like their lives fucking depend on it. They make it back to the border of Point Pleasant, and the Mothman has been trailing them this entire time in the air. And at one point, they supposedly got up to like 100 miles per hour. I don't know, you know, how accurate that is in like a 1960s vehicle. You know, maybe at that time, like the cars were in better condition, but having owned a 1961 Mercury Comet myself for several years, I can definitely tell you that even getting it up to 80 miles per hour was sketchy as fuck. So getting a car like that up to 100 miles per hour is like, wow. Like, wow, the entire thing must have been rattling like crazy. I can only imagine. And like, I really hope they didn't have factory tires on that car because they're fucking tiny. One little like curve of your wheel wrong and like fucking peace out, like you're gone. So anyway, just totally my thoughts on that, you know what I mean? Like that part of it, to me, I'm just like, I don't really see how that's possible. But either way, that's what they claim, is that they got up to 100 miles per hour while they were like racing back to the border of Point Pleasant. And the Mothman dove off right before they got to the border and was like, no, I'm not interested in actually going into the town, and flew into a field where he started kind of like hopping and running away. I guess he's not very good on his feet. Like he was really clumsy and he was like stumbling along, and that was like something that really stood out to these people. So they were like, are we crazy? No, I don't think we're crazy. We all saw this, and you know, should we go to the police or should we just kind of keep it to ourselves? So they ended up deciding, yeah, we're going to the police because this is freaking bizarre. So they did. They went to the police, they reported everything. The police just, you know, really honestly didn't know what to do with that information. But there was a reporter who really took interest in this, especially when more and more people started saying that they saw the Mothman. Not all of the sightings of the Mothman were the same. Sometimes it was, oh, he didn't have glowing red eyes, he looked like a regular man in stature, he didn't actually fly, or he was only flying. There were pilots that said that they thought they saw like a small aircraft, but it was actually Mothman. There were like over 100 sightings in a very short period of time in the 1960s of Mothman. Some other crazy stuff was also going on at that time. UFO sightings, strange lights in the woods. In Point Pleasant, there were also sightings of Birdman before Mothman even existed. And I don't know much about Birdman, but you can assume what Birdman would look like in comparison to what Mothman, and the description I gave you what Mothman looks like. So there's that. In combination with the UFO sightings, strange things happening on telephones and electronics not working properly. Then there was also this entity that people think may have been an angel, may have been an alien, may have been in some way connected to the Mothman that was like a harbinger. His name was Ingrid something. He had like a really creepy voice, and he would talk to people and tell them that bad things were going to happen. It really started taking shape. An author even came down and really took interest in the story. There was like a particular reporter, local reporter that was really, really interested in the story. Some people were willing to talk about their experiences and others were not. There was one woman who, when she saw the Mothman, she developed some kind of reaction where like her eyes were all like red, and you know, like the outside of her eyes was all red, and you know, she just wanted to put the whole thing behind her. If I were in that situation, I'd probably feel the same way, you know, if it caused that kind of physical damage to me. But maybe not, I don't know. I guess I would have to be in that situation and find out exactly how I would feel about it at that time. You know, it's really hard to say. All of these sightings, right? So many people have seen the Mothman. Town is flipping out. We're getting close to the end of, I think it was like 1966 or 1967, something like that. This horrible, horrible, crazy, tragic thing happened in Point Pleasant. So they have this bridge, it's called the Silver Bridge, that connects West Virginia to Ohio. And it was like a week or so before Christmas. There were tons of people that were out Christmas shopping. They were going into Cincinnati to do their shopping, and they were trying to come back across the bridge or vice versa. Either way, there was some kind of problem with like a traffic light or something, and the bridge got totally jam-packed with people and big rigs, and there was a structural problem with the bridge itself. Something happened to it. I don't know the exact specifics, but the bridge collapsed, and tons of people ended up in the river in their cars. I think there was something like 66 deaths. It was absolutely heartbreaking and tragic for a small town like Point Pleasant that doesn't have a huge population to begin with. So this is really hitting everyone in this town. At that point, the whole Mothman thing kind of died out because people were just mourning the losses of their loved ones and their neighbors and their peers. People in West Virginia at that time said that you could see presents and clothing and things like that floating down the river. I mean, how absolutely devastating to have to live through something like that. Still maintain that that is your home. It's got to be just an absolutely awful thing to go through. You know, the town just wanted to move on, and Mothman kind of died out at that point. But what I find really interesting is that a lot of people said that they saw the Mothman before this occurred, and that the Mothman itself was a harbinger of doom of this freak accident that occurred that Christmas. People have also stated that the Mothman has been seen before other horrible accidents and natural disasters. He got a reputation as the harbinger of doom, which, you know, that's an awful fucking reputation to have. And, you know, I definitely wouldn't want to run into the Mothman myself because, you know, who knows what kind of terrible things could happen after that. I can only imagine. And I'm definitely superstitious about cryptids like this and what it would mean if you ran into one, especially one that has an identity as a harbinger of doom. Just like, no, absolutely not. So I started doing a ton of research into the Mothman, and I found out some really interesting things. One of the things I found out is that Point Pleasant, West Virginia, when it was first settled, there was a whole battle going on between the French and the English and the Indians. The Indians ended up siding with the French because they thought they were winning. I guess things got really bad and the French GTFO'd, and then the Indians were on their own, and they ended up getting stabbed in the back by the English. The chief of that Native American tribe set a 200-year curse on the town of Point Pleasant. Way before any sightings of the Mothman, there were all kinds of crazy things going on in Point Pleasant, like UFO sightings, strange lights, the Birdman that I mentioned. And it definitely makes you wonder, like, the validity of a curse like that, especially coming from the chief of a Native American tribe, and all of the crazy things that have happened in Point Pleasant since that time. If I needed to curse anyone, I should definitely find someone like that chief of that Native American tribe, because I think that they could actually, like, legit get it done. I've got a few exes that maybe you could curse for me. So anyway, that's one of the things I found out. Something else I found out is that there is a Mothman museum, and this museum was founded by a guy that was alive during the time that all of the Mothman sightings were going on. His dad was pretty big into it and had saved a lot of interesting information about Mothman and everything that was in the newspapers and things like that. And I listened to some interviews with him. He was basically like, I want people to be able to come into my museum and experience what it was really like during that time, and take a step back in time to what Point Pleasant was like during this whole Mothman thing, which is just, you know, I would imagine that that would be a fascinating experience to really see how the residents of Point Pleasant, West Virginia were dealing with everything going on in their small town and what they were seeing at that time. It must have been just an extraordinary situation to live through. This small town, you know, they really took this prophecy of the Mothman, they really took this legend, and they molded it into something that they were really able to give their town a name for. And now they even have an awesome looking festival every September, all surrounding the Mothman. And they have a huge statue in the middle of their town. And he's like this big metal statue, and he's got the red glowing eyes, and he has like a super chiseled butt. Like, that butt is goals, man. It is a super, super prime specimen of a butt. I personally really want to go to West Virginia sometime in the near future and go to the Mothman Festival, check out the Mothman Museum, and just dig into the Mothman as much as humanly possible, because I find it so utterly fascinating. You know, this concept of this cryptid that was not just seen by one or two people, but hundreds of people. And get this. Just a couple of years ago in Chicago, a woman that worked for the USPS at the Chicago O'Hare Airport reported that she also saw the Mothman while she was walking out to her car after work. And, you know, she was like walking out, beeped her car to unlock it as she was getting closer, and that made her headlights go on. And when she did that, she saw this creature in the distance. She thought it was a man in a trench coat, but with the lights turning on, it made it turn around. And she realized that the trench coat was wings. And it had like the red glowing eyes, and it was making like strange clicking noises with its tongue that were inhuman. And it started spreading out its wings and like running towards her. And of course she like lost her shit, dove into the car and sped the fuck out of there and went home. No looking back, no checking to see if it was following her, just went home. And when she got home, she told her husband, who I guess also worked at the same place, and he told her that other people had also been seeing the Mothman there. It makes you wonder if the Mothman moved on to another place, or if he doesn't even exist at all. It's really hard to say. There are a lot of skeptics who think that the Mothman is nothing more than a huge bird of some sort, some kind of crane or some kind of owl or something like that. And the red glowing eyes is just a reflection of light. I guess anything is possible, but I personally like to believe that there's a cryptid out there like Mothman or Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster, because it just adds a little bit of spice and magic to the world, that you never really know what's out there. You don't know what you're going to run into, and you don't know the ramifications of running into that thing. I don't know. Adds a little pep to my step. I'm not sure. If you ran into the Mothman, I would love to know what you think you would do in that scenario. Leave a comment. If you have other information about Mothman that you'd like to share, please definitely leave a comment with the info. The more the merrier. Love hearing about all of the cryptids and folklore and everything of the Appalachia. So feel free to share anything you'd like. If you want to come back for another episode of Coffee and Cryptids and, you know, learn more about interesting folklore and cryptids, hit like and subscribe, and I'll be here. Bye.